Hey, it's so good to see you. I am so excited to talk to you today about the differences between Pilates and yoga. This is a question I get asked so often, so I'm really excited to address it here. So I'll tell you from a personal standpoint, I am a Pilates teacher and a physical therapist. I've been doing both professionally for 20 years. I also am a yoga student, okay? I don't teach yoga. I'm not trained or certified to teach yoga, but I've been taking yoga since about 2008. So I have experience with it from that side and doing a few trainings as well. So when I bring in my personal experience, that's kind of how you know where I'm coming from. So one difference between Pilates and yoga is obviously when they started. So yoga was started over 5,000 years ago. It has a very long history. Pilates, on the other hand, is just about 100 years old. So yoga started actually as a means towards spiritual enlightenment. And I think that's why it kind of has that spiritual component to it. It was actually developed as a means to spiritual enlightenment and self-awareness. Pilates wasn't necessarily developed in that vein, but that being said, it does have a component of spirit that a lot of people don't realize nowadays. Joseph Pilates said, this was his quote, that Pilates was the perfect coordination between body, mind, and spirit. So he understood that there was an importance of that self-awareness when it comes to our overall health. So I think that's really important to kind of understand and grasp, is that is a big difference, obviously, between yoga and Pilates, and especially how they're taught nowadays. But the original intent of Pilates was to actually have that awareness of your mind and your spirit control over your body and how the three of them really work together for overall health. So I think that's a really cool component. But yes, a very obvious difference is taking classes now in this current society. Yoga versus Pilates, you will have more of that spiritual component in yoga. You'll have some mantras and those kind of things. And in Pilates, you generally won't. But I will say that really depends on the instructor. I've gone to some yoga classes that have very little, if any, spiritual component. And then I've done some Pilates classes that do have more of that self-awareness kind of self-improvement kind of component to it, because it just depends on the teacher. But that is a very basic difference. Another thing that is somewhat different between Pilates and yoga is that yoga is going to give you more static poses to hold, and Pilates is going to move through poses more. Now, again, that can be different when it comes to different instructors, but yoga, you're going to have things called poses. In Pilates, we don't call them a pose, we call them an exercise. So that alone can kind of tell you a little bit that there is a difference. In yoga, when you're doing Warrior 2 pose, you might hold it for a while. When you're doing Warrior 1, you might hold it for a while. In Pilates, when we're doing a teaser, we generally aren't going to go up and hold it for a long time and come back down. Now, again, sometimes I'll do that to throw in a wrench into your workout and challenge you a little bit more. But in general, we're going to go through more repetitions versus actually holding a static posture. Okay, so that's another difference. Another thing is this idea of flow, which I think is really interesting, because people will say, oh, yoga flows. But to be honest, a really good Pilates class is going to flow too. Because when you look at the original intent of Pilates by Joseph Pilates, it was to get your heart rate up. So it was to have a little bit of a cardio component. And that is accomplished when we flow from one exercise to the other. So really the difference though with the yoga and Pilates is that in yoga, they're going to go through a sequence of exercises. So if you think of a sun salutation, which is your, warrior and into your vinyasa and those kind of things, you'll go through that, and you might go through it numerous times, or you're always coming back to that vinyasa pose. Pilates isn't necessarily like that. So we're going to flow because we're going to move from one exercise to the other, but we're not going back and repeating all of these sequences over and over again. So the original Pilates mat work is going to be your, 30, 31 exercises right in a row, depending on how you teach it, right in a row. And we don't go back and repeat them. Again, that's going to be more the traditional class versus in yoga, where you're taught a sequence and you might do that same sequence kind of over and over and over again, or come back to those same poses over and over and over again. All right, so that's kind of another difference you can expect. Another one is that yoga in general is going to put you in more extreme positions. Okay. And again, I am a yoga student. I love yoga. I'm not saying this bad whatsoever, but as a physical therapist, to be honest, if I'm having someone come back from an injury, I am going to have them do some Pilates with me first to get stronger before I let them go back to their intense yoga class. And I will tell you why very specifically, because in the more advanced yoga classes, you're going into more advanced postures that are putting you into a bigger range of motion. So you're going into some of those big back bends that aren't always easy to control. Versus Pilates, the original name of it actually was contrology. That's what Joseph Pilates called it, the study of control. So it had a little more aspect of trying to control that range of motion in your body. So as a physical therapist, when I'm trying to get someone back from an injury, I want to control their range of motion. I want to control what their body is doing so I'm not putting them into an inflammatory state. So I want to do that first with some of my basic Pilates principles. Then I absolutely am going to encourage them, if they enjoy yoga, to get back into their yoga class. But I want to make sure that they have that control of their body first, so that when they go into some of those more extreme postures and range of motion, they, again, can control it. They can get into it. They can get out of it safely and use the right muscles to do it. Okay, so to me, from a very helicopter view, again, I'm always going to say teachers are going to teach things a little differently. And you could obviously go to a beginner yoga class versus a really advanced Pilates class, and that's going to change things too. But if they're on the same level, the same intensity of class, I am going to want someone in Pilates first so I can teach them how to control their range of motion. And then I'll let them go into their yoga class if they want to gain into those extreme positions and extreme postures, okay? Because that's just where it's going to put you. It's a little more extreme, obviously, for flexibility, for those kind of things, versus Pilates, that we aren't going into that kind of extreme range of motion. All right. One other difference, that's a fairly obvious difference, is that in Pilates, we do have the opportunity to use equipment. So most of what I teach for people at home is mat Pilates based, because obviously most people don't necessarily have equipment, but there's this whole wonderful, wide, beautiful world of Pilates equipment that I teach as well. That includes reformers, trap tables, chairs, and all these fun little props. And so that is something that's an obvious difference. If you go to Pilates equipment classes, that's going to be a complete difference, because you're using this one basic piece of equipment that was developed just for Pilates. So those are kind of the main differences between the two. I am not ever going to tell anyone that one is better than the other, because I would never tell anyone that anything is better than something else. They're just different, and one can be better than the other for different bodies. Okay, so from my personal standpoint, the very first yoga class I took was right after I got into Pilates. And to be honest, you guys, I didn't like it at all. I did not like laying in Shavasana at the end. I didn't like anything about it, and I didn't know why people liked it. It took me about 5 years to go back to another class. And when I did, it was a dear friend of mine teaching. She had opened her own studio, so I was just trying to support her. And there was something about it I fell in love with. And I've been a student of it since then. I do it once every couple weeks at this point. It has helped me in various ways. But I will be honest, I don't think I would have appreciated it or been able to be successful at it if it weren't for Pilates. I think that was a big piece of why it took me so long to really enjoy it, is because, like I said before, I had learned how to take ownership over my own body. I was stronger. I knew how to modify things for myself. So it made me feel much safer in the yoga class, and it made things more accessible. Like, oh, I actually can try this handstand because of the strength I've gained in Pilates, the muscles that I've built up, and all the work with the straps and the planking. I can then try a handstand in my yoga class and feel somewhat safe because of all that work in Pilates that I did first. So that's my history with it. I hope that helps you as well to simply know the difference. Here on my YouTube channel and with my workouts, you will find some Pilates yoga fusion workouts because, like I told you, I do love them both for various reasons. Pilates will always have my heart and my soul because it's my history, it's where I come from, and it's what I use most for all of my clients and all of my physical therapy patients. But I encourage you to try different things and to always have a variety of workouts so that you can cross-train and find your absolute strongest self. Okay, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for stopping by. Remember, subscribe to my channel and you'll be notified every time a new video comes up. Like and comment on this video and let me know what you thought. You can also always come over to jessicavalantpilates.com to find all the resources I have for living a healthy lifestyle, including full-length workout videos, healthy recipes, and a community I would love for you to be a part of. So I'll see you there.